The Great Chicago Fire of 1871 engulfed the city of Chicago and burned it to the ground. The fire lasted for 3 days due to dry weather and wooden houses and was the cause of the new fire safety laws. The city had the responsibility to give their citizens the right to protection against the fire.
It was a windy October day, 1871, 9 o'clock, 137 DeKalb Street. A furious and aggressive fire spread throughout Chicago. The blame, Miss O'Leary's cow.
Historians believe the start of the fire was a myth, but claim the fire did start at the house of the O'Learys, located in the west part of the city. Before the fire died on the morning of Tuesday, October 10th, the fire cut through 3 1/3 of Chicago's geographical area. Approximately 1/3 of the city's valuation, or $200 million in property, valued at more than $1 billion today, was damaged, along with 100,000 people left homeless and 300 dead. People held Mrs. O'Leary responsible.
The Great Chicago Tribune claimed Miss O'Leary had motivation to burn the city. The O'Learys were a poor family working as laborers and keeping livestock healthy to sell milk to neighbors for money.
They ran welfare, but the city discovered she'd been selling milk on the side and cut her off. Some said she swore vengeance, but she claimed not in an interview with the police and fire commissioners of Chicago.
It took 3 days to put the fire out. One element that affected the start of the fire was the wooden houses and buildings that easily caught flame. The population of Chicago tripled due to the 7 railroads into the city. These trains brought immigrants in from the east. Because of the great quantity of people coming into Chicago, houses were built of wood closely together and sloppily. Over 2,000 acres of Chicago were made of wood.
The dryness of the air and land also put Chicago in jeopardy during the fire. The season had been unusually dry. They had only about 1/4 the normal amount of rain falling between July and October. It had been 3 days since it had last rained and everything was deprived of moisture. By October, there were 6 fires occurring daily. For the large population of Chicago, there were only 200 firemen. Because of the huge fire fog the night before, they had damaged equipment, including the building where they had held the water pumps, and the large pump to pull water out of Lake Michigan had failed. Without water pumps, these men were exhausted and unprepared for what was to come.
During the outbreak, most of all the firemen were sent to the wrong location because of the watchman, who had told the telegraph dispatcher the wrong streets at which the fire began. Only one successfully got to the fire, but had no great impact on extinguishing it. Finally, when the firefighters got to the O'Leary's house, the fire was already raging out of control. Bessie Bradwell Helmer, founder and editor of the Chicago Eagle News, lived in the South Division with their family as a child and experienced this horror in Chicago's history. She quotes,
It was like a snowstorm, only the flakes were red instead of white.
The fire continued to spread east to north. Strong southwestern winds pushed flames high into the sky, creating convection spirals or fire doubles. This freak of nature spit fire-burning debris in all directions, causing more to burn.
Because the Chicago River was filled with oil and debris from nearby factories, the fire crossed the river with ease and continued onto the South Division of Chicago. Safes were among the few things that survived from the burning building. A.S. Chapman, who was a child at the time, recalls walking along Randolph Street, looking at all the safes lying in the street.
Safe breaking was a popular industry for a few days. Men grind with soot and ashes, working like fiends with sledgehammers and steel wedges. Everybody looking for money in safes. I see men and women standing around a safe as its door is first open. The air rushes in and I see their hopes turn to ashes. The inside of the safes were so hot that when the oxygen entered in, it ignited and burned the contents within. There's no hope for saving money, family heirlooms, business ledgers, or insurance policy.
From looking at the remains, they figured out that 73 miles of roads, 120 miles of sidewalk, 2,000 lampposts, and 17,500 buildings were destroyed. More than 1/3 of the population was homeless, and jobs and careers were abolished.
The Great Rebuilding of Chicago started just a month after the fire happened. Most of the railroads in Chicago were not damaged, allowing people from all over the world to come, help, and give aid to the suffering city. Reconstruction efforts began quickly and spurred great economic development and population growth. Everything before it was made out of wood, but because of the sudden fire issues, architects started using other materials like brick, slate, stone, marble, limestone, and terracotta, the most fireproof. The help from others contributed to making 6,000 makeshift homes in 1 week for the homeless. Between 2 and 3 million books were destroyed from library collections. Books were collected in England to start a new library, the Chicago Public Library, which opened on January 1st, 1873. As the rebuilding took place, the population grew from 324,000 people to 500,000 Chicagoans as more people settled down under the safer circumstances. After the fire, the gap between the rich and the poor grew immensely. Before the fire, many of the poor didn't have homes to stay in, or if lucky, had a small wooden shack. When the fire took place, many could not save their living quarters and were left with nothing. The rich had the money for home insurance. They were able to receive money from the bank for their things they had lost. This allowed them to easily rebuild their homes with the proper fireproof building materials that made their homes sturdier, safer, and more resistant. Without the money from the insurance company or the bank, the poor had nothing to regain.
The poor not only lost their belongings, but their reputation. Miss O'Leary lived within a poor neighborhood. The less fortunate were easy to blame. The rich held the poor responsible for the fire that had taken place.
To prevent further fires in the future, Chicago established laws to protect citizens and the city. These laws provided safety. Joseph Medill was elected mayor of Chicago after the fire, as candidate of the temporary fireproof party. Laws were created to ban wooden materials and reinforce the use of fireproof ones. Medill supported these types of rules. Many argued for better fire codes and fire precautions. The politics began to change after people rallied for safer conditions.
The Great Chicago Fire was an impact and event that changed Chicago. The Windy City is now a safe and resourceful environment that has transformed the people and geographical outlook of the city.
Been down low, but drive away your sins. When you get religion, you wanna shout and sing. There'll be a hard time in old town